Mists of red-orange drifted between the colossal spore trees of Varkar, prime like ghostly ribbons, flickering in the twin suns' dying light. Each tree's bulbous trunk pulsed faintly with bioluminescent sap, casting the undergrowth in a sickly glow that played tricks on the eye. Lyra Chun's reconnaissance skiff hovered scant meters above the forest floor, its sensors screeching in protest at the electromagnetic turbulence. She clipped her harness to the retractable boarding ladder, hard hammering against the damp weight of her chest. Stepping into the jungle, every breath felt heavy thick with spores and heat. Strange, six-legged insects scuttled across her boots, antennae quivering, while crimson-winged birds screeched overhead before vanishing into the leafy ceiling. The skiff's rotor wash had whirled up a cloud of iridescent pollen. Motes danced in her helmet's spotlight like embers around a fire. She took careful, measured steps along a barely discernible path, scanning the shadows for signs of intelligent life. Her mission: first contact, peaceful contact. The Council on Earth had emphasized diplomacy, openness, a calm exchange of knowledge. Yet Varka Prime had already lived up to its reputation for animosity toward off-worlders. A rhythmic chant broke, the silence low guttural syllables that reverberated through her bones. Before she could triangulate the source, a dozen Red Claw warriors emerged from the underbrush. Each stood twice her height, sinewy limbs covered in russet fur, six ominous, hands clutching razor-tipped bone spears. Their faces were crowned with curved mandibles, and emerald eyes glittered with fierce curiosity. Lyra raised her hands slowly. "I come in peace." She spoke into her translator sphere, but the device crackled and went silent. The electromagnetic storms had fried its delicate components. She tapped her wrist console. No response. Her communicator was dead, and her emergency beacon sealed in her flight suit's inner pocket was now unreachable until she took off the harness. The Red Claws advanced, closing a circle around her. Their leader, a towering female adorned with elaborate bone jewelry and a headdress woven from glowing fungus, raised a spear. The chant swelled as more of her tribe emerged, hauling long lengths of obsidian-veined vines and black stone slabs. Lyra's mind raced. This was a ritual of judgment. She had read reports of pyres, punishments by lava, but she had hoped them to be exaggeration. Before she could back away, strong arms gripped her shoulders. She yelped, twisting free, only to be seized again, this time by four warriors who bound her wrists with braided tendrils. The cords tightened, cutting into her gloves. Lyra's pulse spiked as they dragged her toward an open pit where molten rock pooled like liquid sunlight. The air above it shimmered with heat, distorting the towering spore trees into ghostly dancers. They laid her atop a flat basalt slab that hovered on narrow pillars above the pit. The slab was carved with ritual glyph spirals and claw marks that glowed faintly as the lava's heat seeped upward. Captive, she could only watch as the Red Claws arranged sharpened obsidian arrows in a circle around her, their tips aimed inward like dark petals poised to bloom. Sweat beaded on Lyra's forehead. The heat was searing. Each breath tasted of sulfur and ash. Her suit's cooling system struggled to compensate. She ground her jaw. She had trained for emergencies, for hostile encounters, but nothing had prepared her for this. Thoughts of Earth flickered through her mind. The curve of her daughter's smile, the hush of her favorite reading nook, the gentle hum of her home's life support. She swallowed back panic and focused on her next move. As the tribal shaman, a gaunt, tusked figure draped in bone lace and fungus robes, stepped forward, chanting in a tongue that quivered like a wounded creature, Lyra's hand brushed against her pocket. The emergency beacon. If she could free one hand, but the tendrils bit too deep. She exhaled, muscles coiling for one final effort. The shaman raised his staff high, its ivory crooks glowing with inner fire. The chanting crescendoed, echoing through the jungle like a symphony of vengeance. Lyra's heart thundered. This was the moment. The end of everything she'd ever known, or the beginning of something she could never have imagined. And then, just as the staff began its descent, a far-off roar split the air. Lyra's head whipped toward the sound, hope and dread colliding in her chest. Asterisk. The basalt slab beneath Lyra Chun shuddered as veins of molten obsidian pulsed beneath its surface, sending tremors through her bound wrists. The Red Claw shaman's chant rose into a frenzied crescendo, each guttural word punctuated by the pounding of ritual drums carved from hollowed spore trees. Around the pit, warriors heaved massive slabs of black stone into position, erecting a circular rampart that trapped heat and light between its walls. Orange sparks danced in the humid air as the shaman thrust his staff downward, igniting hidden embers in the lava channel. A roar of flame surged up, sizzling the air with a sound like 1,000 hissing serpents. Lyra's heat sensors flashed warnings in her vision, her cooling vest working at maximum capacity just to keep her body from cooking. Sweat streamed down her face in salty rivulets, stinging her eyes as she fought the vertigo that came with such searing proximity. She forced herself to breathe slowly, memorizing the pattern of the shaman's chant. Ancient glyphs carved into the slab glowed bright white, feeding off the heat until they flared like stars about to supernova. Lyra's mind raced, if she could interrupt the ritual, if she could break their focus even for a heartbeat. She flexed her fingers, testing the braided tendrils. They were woven from living vines, stronger than Kevlar, yet brittle when scorched. A plan began to form. The shaman raised a carved obsidian blade, its edge shimmering as though alive. "For the honor of the clan," he intoned, voice echoing in the fiery chamber. Two warriors approached, poised to pin Lyra's limbs against the slab. She tensed, fighting both terror and the urge to shout. The pain threshold approached. Every nerve in her body felt aflame. As the obsidian blade began its downward arc, Lyra sprang her trap. With all her strength, she twisted her shoulders, jerking her arms free of the weakened tendrils. The vine snapped with a crack that echoed loud as thunder. The warriors reeled back in shock. Lyra rolled off the slab, the radiant heat scorching her suit as she scrambled to her feet. Behind her, the ritual glyphs sputtered and dim-cut, off from their power source. The shaman's chant faltered, uncertainty rippling through the tribe. Raw fear met Lyra's eyes as she yanked the emergency beacon from her pocket and activated it. A piercing siren blast shattered the tense stillness, while a bright holographic flare shot skyward, illuminating the jungle canopy. Warriors raised their spears in alarm. The shaman hissed a word of command, but none obeyed. In that instant of chaos, Lyra seized her chance. She sprinted toward the fallen remnants of her skiff, shards of basalt chipping under her boots. Behind her, the Red Claws hesitated, torn between centuries-old customs and the undeniable power of the alien technology. The ritual pit began to slump as the lava channel collapsed, molten rock draining back into hidden fissures. Panting, Lyra reached her craft and slammed a fist against the hull's emergency access panel. Sparks flew as locks disengaged. With a final glance over her shoulder at the stunned tribesfolk, she ducked inside ready to pilot herself out of this inferno. But then the jungle trembled once more, and a distant roar neither beast nor machine shook the air with a promise, more astonishing than any rescue beacon could deliver. The jungle tremor rippled through Lyra's bones as she fought to engage the skiff's thrusters. Panels snapped shut around her, sealing out heat, but the roar grew louder, an impossible sound. Pot mechanical crackle, pot bestial howl. She froze, finger hovering over the ignition switch. Outside, the ring of Red Claw warriors fell silent. Their spears lowered instinctively, eyes fixed on the far edge of the clearing where the dense underbrush quivered. Lyra risked a glance through the viewport. There, stepping into the molten glow of the dying pit, was a lone figure. He strode forward with a predator's grace, the undergrowth parting before him. His armor was an eclectic collage of Earth issue plates and scavenged Varkaran chitin, each segment scarred and repainted in mottled greens and grays. A broad-bladed rifle rested casually in his hands, its stocks inlaid with tribal carvings that echoed the Red Claw's ritual glyphs. Straps and pouches bulged with unknown gear. A coiled energy whip hung at his hip. Lyra pressed her forehead to the glass. "Whew," she whispered to herself. The stranger paused at the pit's edge, boots crunching on black glass debris. He surveyed the assembled clan with a slow, deliberate calm. Then he spoke not in the jagged clicks of Varkaran, but in heavily accented galactic common. "By the stars of Polaris, cease this madness." The shaman clutched his staff, hissing a command. But the tribe stood frozen, uncertainty painted across their multifaceted faces. The stranger's voice, deep and resonant, carried a timbre they recognized. Human. Lyra's heart thundered. He raised his rifle, but he did not aim at Lyra. Instead, he fired a single round into the molten pool. The bolt of blue-white plasma screamed through the air, striking the pit's retaining wall. With a shattering boom, the basalt fractured, sending molten rivulets cascading harmlessly into cracks in the bedrock. Steam hissed as the lava drained into hidden channels. A shockwave rattled the jungle, and the glyphs carved into Lyra's slab winked out. The suspended platform trembled, dropping a foot before catching on its supports. With the pit neutralized, the heat receded, and the oppressive haze lifted. Silence fell. The Red Claws stared at the stranger, then at Lyra, then back at him halting, disbelieving. He lowered his rifle and approached deliberately, each step resonating authority. Reaching Lyra's skiff, he tapped a gaunted finger on its hull. A panel flickered, then slid open before him. He stepped inside as if he owned the vessel, extending his free hand toward Lyra. She scrambled up the boarding ramp, fingers still trembling around her ruined suit's cooling controls. He caught her by the arm, steadying her. His grip was firm, but not hostile. Up close, his face was weathered sun-brown skin etched with fine lines, a jagged scar running from temple to jaw. His gray eyes were intense and kind. "Lyra Chun," he said, enunciating her name carefully. "You're safe now. How?" Her voice cracked. "Who are you?" He offered a wry half-smile. "Name's Dex Marlowe. I crash-landed here 6 cycles ago. Took me this long to earn a shred of respect among these neighbors." He swept a hand toward the Red Claws, who remained rooted to the packed earth. "They thought this ritual would purge your alien corruption. They were wrong." Lyra's pulse slowed as relief washed over her. She studied him, his salvage gear, the tribal trophies strapped to his belt, the way he carried himself like both outsider and insider. "You speak Varkaran fluently," she ventured. "Picked it up the hard way," Dex replied with a grim chuckle. "I've been through more rites than I care to remember." He glanced at the cooling pit. "Seems you avoided the worst of them." Behind them, the shaman began muttering in Varkaran, thick with caution. Dex raised a hand. "They need guidance," he translated. "Your translator's busted." He tapped Lyra's wrist console, then waved his own datapad. Symbols flickered across its cracked screen, an improvised lexicon between human and Red Claw scripts. As the tribe's leader stepped forward, Dex laid a calming tone into common words. He gestured to Lyra, then to the sky, then to himself. His translation was rough but clear. "She came in peace. She seeks friendship." Slowly, the leader lowered her bone spear, the corroborating nod of elders rippling through the circle. Lyra exhaled a shaky breath, and placed a tentative hand on Dex's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. His eyes met hers with a glint of shared adventure. "Don't mention it," he replied. "But we've got a lot to discuss before the Council on Earth hears about this, or before someone else decides on a cleansing ritual of their own." Above them, the twin suns sank below the horizon, painting the spore trees in shades of violet and amber. Under that twilight sky, a human and an alien stood side by side, two survivors on a world of fire and mystery, bound together by fate. And the promise of a new alliance. The chill of Varkar Prime's twin moons crept into the clearing, turning the jungle's heat-stained embers to cool violet shadows. The Red Claw Council stood in tight formation around Lyra and Dex, bone spears lowered in cautious submission. Above them, the colossal spore trees dripped phosphorescent droplets that glinted like stars in the gloom. Dex stepped forward, voice calm but commanding. "Elders of the Red Claw," he began in Varkaran, each word chosen with care. "This human Lyra Chung comes not to conquer, but to learn. She carries no weapon but curiosity, no torch but goodwill." He gestured, too. The crippled skiff behind them. "Our people wish to share knowledge, trade medicine and metalwork, and to forge bonds beyond our worlds." A tense silence followed as the shaman's emerald eyes darted between Dex and Lyra. The ritual pit lay abandoned, its obsidian stones cracked and hollowed by the plasma blast, yet its presence still writhed beneath every heartbeat. Finally, the shaman raised his staff, the fungus headdress brushing the glowing vines above. His voice, low and melodic, wove a single question. Why should we trust the seeds of our own fire? Lyra inhaled, stepping beside Dex. In her softest Varkaran, halting but sincere, she replied, "Because we, too, know fear. We, too, have danced on the edge of ash and flame. I have seen worlds burn, and I have lost people because I chose not to share my hand in peace." She paused, scanning the elders' faces. "Let us plant a new fire, one of shared light, rather than judgment." A gust stirred the foliage as the council murmured among themselves. Spears were lowered further, heads bowed in deliberation. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, the tribe's leader slowly extended a taloned hand palm upward, an ancient gesture of welcome. Dex reached out, placing Lyra's hand softly against it. The contact sparked a tremor of bioluminescence through the leader's jewelry. The shaman nodded, chanting a single word that resonated deep in the earth. "Kaloon." Vines. Overhead responded, pulsing in rhythm. The ritual pit, though broken, exhaled a final hiss as hidden fissures sealed themselves, the danger sealed away by tribal decree. Lyra exhaled, relief flooding her as the tribe's warriors relaxed their stances. Dex clapped a hand on her shoulder. "One step closer," he murmured, eyes bright with triumph. Under the moonlit canopy, a makeshift council circle formed. Maps of star routes were unfurled on bark scrolls. Specimens of Varkaran fungi and earth flora exchanged hands. Lyra and Dex listened as the elders spoke of their world's cycles of fire and renewal, of trials by lava and rebirth through ash. In turn, they shared tales of Earth's blue oceans, its lofty mountains, and the fragile beauty of its people. As dawn's pale light crept over the horizon, painting the canopy in washed pink hues, Lyra Chun stood at the heart of a new alliance. The Red Claw elders had promised safe passage for her research party. In exchange, she vowed to bring Earth's healers, engineers, and dreamers to Varkar Prime. Dex, once a lone castaway, would serve as guide and ambassador between two cultures. With the council's blessing echoing in her ears, Lyra climbed aboard her skiff and waved farewell to the tribe, no longer her captors, but her partners. Engines humming, she and Dex ascended through drifting spores into the violet dawn, leaving behind the jungle of embers and carrying forward a fragile but hopeful spark of unity between worlds.